Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It's good to be back. It's Tuesday afternoon here in the Eastern time zone of the USA. It's 17:15 Zulu on July 18th, 2023. And this is Tuesdays with DX Engineering. You never know what you're going to get. And today we got a superstar. We got Randy Thompson, K5ZD, fresh from his trip to Italy. Hello, Randy.
Hello there, Tim.
So, Randy, tell us about your WRTC, the World Radio Sport Team Championship experience, where you finished in the top 10, you and your teammate.
Yeah, so the World Radio Sport Team Championship, for those of you who don't know, is a competition held every 4 years where teams that have qualified from around the world come to one place. So instead of having everybody operate from their own stations or geographies or whatever, we bring everybody together for as much of a level playing field as we can. There were 58 teams this time. I was partnered with Tom Georgian's W2SC. We managed to finish 8th, which was a little disappointing. We'd hoped to do a little better, but at the same time, we're pretty happy with that. We were the top team that was not from Europe. And it's always interesting when you do a contest like this where you drop into some place in the world that you've never operated from before. You have 24 hours. There's no do-overs. There's no what did people do last year. You just start and you do the best that you can. And so it's always very nerve-wracking thing. And also, we bring our whole station with us. So the organizers provide antennas and a room. And then we have to bring all the radios and everything. So there's also a lot of, anxiety as you're trying to transport essentially a whole field day station in your suitcases halfway around the world.
So, Randy, this is not your first go at this, but is this your best finish?
No, actually, the best Tom and I did came in 5th in Russia. So
so that was 2010.
Yes. And then the last two, I've missed the last 2 WRTCs, one time as an organizer in Boston and one time as the chief judge in Germany. So I was glad to be back to actually doing the operating.
And this time in Italy, I mean, what was the thing that surprised you the most about the whole WRTC experience?
Well, I think I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but the fact that it came off so well. When you consider this organizing committee, they were supposed to have the event last year, but because of COVID, they got way behind the curve, and because everything was shut down in Italy, and so it got postponed a year. And then, of course, we had the Ukraine war happen, which caused a lot of disruption. And then they had some epic flooding, historic flooding in Bologna, in the area where the event was, just 3 months ago. And yet they still managed to pull everything together, and they had 58 stations that were ready to go. And that's kind of amazing. Think about that. You got to set up 58 field day stations that are all ready to go at a specific time on a specific weekend. And you're doing it in an area that's probably about 80 miles by 80 miles. So things are spread out all over the place. So just the organization was one thing. And to me, one of the things that always stands out in WRTCs is you get to meet all these contesters from around the world that you talk to. I met, several people that I know I've worked hundreds and hundreds of times and had never met before. So it's great to now have a face when I talk to them on the air.
So tell us, what were band conditions like for you? What stood out there?
I think, well, obviously we're at a sunspot peak, which should mean things are great, and they were, but it's still summertime, and summertime conditions are always disturbed and kind of upside down. So 2 things surprised me is, number one, we're sitting kind of southern Europe, but farther north in Italy. So we could use the low bands, like 40 meters had activity all day, just like you would hear 40 meters here, where you hear W8s and W9s all day. The same thing in Europe. So there were always people you could work on 40. 80 was good at night, even though we were using an 80 meter inverted V with the top at 30 feet. But the real surprise was how good 15 and 20 were. 20 was open to the United States from probably about 4 p.m. local time in Italy. So we're a few hours away from sunset, all the way through the night, well into after the sun came up. There were just USA, and the West Coast at sometimes was louder than the East Coast. And then 15, the same thing. It opened in the late afternoon. And then I worked some USA stations on 15 meters at 2 a.m. in the morning in Italy. So that was pretty unexpected, I guess.
So were you using any trick or innovative boxes or I mean, everybody's always saying, well, they did better because, was it just, did you have a good station? Did you have a great station?
Well, I think one of the things that's a great equalizer, of course, we all had the same antenna. So we all had a tri-bander, which was 2 elements on 20, 2 on 15, and 3 on 10. It was 30 feet off the ground. The area around Bologna is super flat, so it's not like anybody had a mountaintop. There were a few stations that might have been on a hill or something like that. But for the most part, they all had the same tri-bander at 30 feet. We all had an inverted V for 80 that was just below the top of the tower. And then we all had an inverted V for 40, which was at the 20-foot level. We showed up at the station. You look at this, you go, how are we going to work people around the world with an inverted V at 20 feet? But we did. We had almost 1,300 contacts on 40. So, but from a station, inside the station, we had 2 Elecraft K3s. And you've got 2 stations that are operating independently. So you're essentially multi-2. 2 operators both can operate on any band and mode anytime they want. They're just not allowed to be on the same band at the same time. So we had a triplexer, so we could share the tri-bander between the 2 stations. We had Tom, my partner, W2SC, had built a nice switch box so that anytime you pushed a button on the front of the radio to change bands or change modes, it automatically selected the correct antenna for you. There was interlocking so that one station couldn't transmit into another. The keyer was all built into the box as well. So the computers also talked to this box. So as we were logging people and so on, it could send things. So it was in many ways way better than my home station, and everything was so automated. It's kind of nice to just be able to say, oh, type in 28400 and start talking.
That does make it easy. And of course, 24 hours, I mean, there's no sleeping, right?
Right. Well, I mean, you could if you wanted to, but not if you want to win. So I think Tom and I we were absolutely on the radio the whole time. I think I saw Tom get up once, maybe twice. I think I got up 3 times. Luckily, the station we had air conditioning. It was pretty hot outside. It was like 90 plus degrees outside. So we at least had a place that was air conditioned, had a bathroom nearby. We had a small refrigerator to have some sodas in, that kind of thing. So it was pretty good compared to some of the guys who operated in barns and greenhouses and things where they were kind of out in the elements.
Well, number 8 is really good. And of course, number 1, if you take away the Europeans that were part of the competition. Let's take a look at the chat room real quick here, Randy. We got M0 Delta Sierra Kilo checking in. Victor Echo 5 Juliet Hotel November is checking in. And Germany 6 Juliet Mike X-Ray. And it's our friend Champ, Echo 21 Echo India Charlie from Bangkok. And we got to see Champ.
Yeah, Champ was a competitor there, so it was great to see him, as always.
Yes. And India Kilo 2 Charlie Hotel Zulu. Nice to see you again, Tim and Randy. He was one of the volunteers.
And by the way, this thing could not happen with all those volunteers. Think about all those stations. Somebody had to do all the setup beforehand and drive people so we could get to the sites. That's what makes it such an organizational project. Yeah, get all these people.
And Marco, thank you so much for everything that you did to make it happen. Kilo India 5 Mike Charlie is on. And we've got, let's see, Keys is on. Hey, Randy, always great to hear you on the contest. Congrats on WRTC. And Coastal Waves and Wires says, how often did the over-the-horizon radar affect you while operating in Europe? Any comments there, Randy?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually noticed it the day before when we were setting up, because it shows up on the pan adapters, this kind of weird wide signal. But during the contest, I don't think I noticed it at all. And even if we did, it was generally 10 to 20 kc wide. You just moved to somewhere else.
Right. And WA4 Mike Oscar Mike, Dan is on. And Gary, W9 X-Ray Tango, says, how did the WRTC contestants prepare for the event once they qualified? How do you prepare, Randy?
Well, that's a good one. Since both stations operate independently, it's not like you really have to develop a lot of teamwork, but you do want to make sure you have all the gear and that everything works correctly. So Tom, W2SC, and I met up on the last weekend of May at my house. We set up a table in the backyard, and we actually built out the whole station and did some operating in the WPX contest. So we made sure that all the pieces worked. We discovered a few things. We agreed on who was going to bring what spares. We had spares for everything. We had 3 radios and 2 station controllers. There was almost nothing that could fail. We even lost a keyboard during the contest. We had a spare one of those. So it's like any other sporting event. You got to show up with all your stuff, because if you don't, or something breaks, you're out.
Right. There's no stopping things. From Bavaria, it's Delta Lima 6 Radio Delta Echo, and our friend Michael, W3 Mike Lima Juliet, super hot phone operator. Kilo Bravo 0 Sierra Quebec Whiskey, and W2GD is checking in. He says, comment about communications.
Yeah, so John and I were roommates, by the way, at the event. They had us doubled up in the hotel to save some money. What he's referring to communicate, probably the one frustration in this whole event, for as great as it all was, or ended up being, we were never quite sure what was going on. This was not a strength of the organizers. So even leading up to it, you were never sure, is it really going to happen? Is it really going to be good or not? You just keep going forward on the belief that, yes, they'll make it happen. But even when we got to the site, they gave us a program that said, okay, at this time, there will be a meeting. But he didn't say where the meeting was. So it kind of became this a little bit of a game of just a whisper campaign of, like, you would ask people, well, where's this meeting? Where's the meeting now? Where's the meeting we're supposed to be going to? And some people would figure it out, and some people would take longer. I know there was a group of people, you had to pay attention. There was a lot of things that were presented orally rather than in writing. So there was one group of people, I think, that missed the bus to the airport on Tuesday, because they didn't realize they needed to meet down at the end of the parking lot instead of at the lobby. And the bus came and went. But again, it's just, some of that, it's just the nature of having so many things going on. And you could tell the organizing committee was so exhausted by the effort of just getting the infrastructure in place that the actual taking care of us for the 3 or 4 days and shepherding us through everything was not their highest priority. So we were on our own.
And Yarov is on. Nice to see you. Greetings from Ukraine. And it was great to have the Ukrainian.
Yaroslav was one of the winners. He was on the winning team.
Yes.
I think that's UW7LL. Congratulations. Yeah. They did a great job. We don't understand. The thing we don't understand is we're 8th. We're the top non-European team. What home field advantages there in a deal like this? We're just working guys. But apparently they knew the propagation. They knew who to ask to change bands at the right time, that kind of thing. So we have some work to do for the next one.
There you go. And let's see, we've got John, W2GD says the diversity of stations, sheds to swimming pools. You sort of covered that. And then
there were some stations that were much better than others. So we did hear of some teams who had swimming pools at their location. By the way, these stations, they set up in something called agroturismo, I think is the right word. And what these are is small bed and breakfast or small inns, essentially small hotels that are set up in these farms. So it's kind of great. You've got a hotel or a house in the middle of a farm, so they have room. So putting up the antennas was good, but that meant they were all completely different. And so there were very fancy ones, very rustic ones. There were some where they just couldn't find, an agroturismo to use. So that's why they ended up in a shed or something like that. But probably the biggest challenge of having everybody in this hotel infrastructure, for lack of a better word, is the noise levels were different from one place to another. So our station wasn't too bad. Some guys had really horrible noise. One station was kind of debilitated all night when the street lights came on, they couldn't hear anything, that kind of thing. But again, it's all part of the challenge of building so many radio stations in such a short time.
Right. And we've got X-Ray Echo 2 Zulu on with us. And let's see here. We've got Victor 51 Yankee Juliet on, another great DXCC country. Sugar Victor 2 Delta Charlie Delta. It was nice to meet you guys. Greetings from Greece. Referee at WRTC. How about the referees?
Yes, yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about the referees, because this is an important job. There is a referee assigned to each team, and their primary job is to make sure that everybody follows the rules, doesn't identify who they are over the air, in other words, doesn't use their cell phone during the contest to look at the packet spots or call their buddies and tell them, hey, work us, that kind of thing. So the referees there really just kind of keep everybody compliant with the rules and to confirm that. And then they also have the ability to listen to both operators during the contest. And some referees really enjoy that. They like listening to the operating and seeing what's going on. But it is a boring job. Imagine that you fly halfway around the world to go sit with two guys who are operating and you can't. That would make me crazy. That's why referee is the one job I've never done. But they're super important to the whole, kind of credibility of the event.
One of our favorite pilots is on W7 Juliet Echo Tango. And then Felipe wants you to comment about the new 3QSO spot feature.
Yes. So there was one really interesting innovation in this WRTC. As we were operating, we were not only sending our score every 5 minutes so that it could show up on the scoreboard, but we were also sending every QSO in real time back to a server that the Italians had set up as a system called Ham Award, done by IW1FRU. So every QSO we were making was being posted to this server. And one of the things that they did was if you made 3 contacts on a single frequency, they would issue a spot. So, on CW, almost everybody gets spotted all the time because of the reverse beacon network, but this is not true on phone. And we're running 100 watts in the middle of Europe with low antennas. So the fact that if you could call CQ on a frequency and you could get 3 people to call you, and there was a lot of anxiety as you'd work 2 guys and you'd be like, come on, the third guy, give me the third guy. When you made the third QSO and hit enter and that showed up at the main server, they would then spot you on that frequency. And they would get put out through the cluster network. And so other people who were chasing all the WRTC stations would show up. So you would have a little bump of activity at times when you got spotted. And then there were extra points this time for working people on sideband versus CW. So there was a lot of emphasis in our team to try to get on sideband. But on sideband, you had to really find a frequency and then wait till you got spotted to have something happen. But it was pretty cool innovation, this concept of real-time logging. We're not very many years away from being able to do this whole thing where the logs are all known right at the end and cross-checked in real time.
Yeah, boy, that was an exciting innovation, and it was great to see it work. Bun is on Echo 25 Kilo Alpha Echo and comments that the Asia number 6 site had a swimming pool, organic food, and air-conditioned room. So it was one of the better ones. And Bun will be operating with Champ in 2026, hopefully, if they qualify. So it's all good all the way around. Randy, thanks so much for coming on. We've been friends for 50 years. This hobby is, I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for amateur radio, which is the best hobby in the world. And congratulations on a great finish in Italy.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm glad I finally made the grade.
All right. We'll see you on the air. And thanks to all of you for watching. 73 from DX Engineering. We'll see you next time.